Just want to start off by thanking everyone. Thank you for spending your day with me. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name's Alexis. I'm a customer success manager here, and I will be leading you through today's Powering Up Your Sales Intel Setup, your admin skills training session today. Quick info on me. I've been an experienced customer success manager for upwards of 8 years or so now, and I've been with SalesIntel for about 8 months or so. So time really flies by quickly when you're having fun over here. So on today's agenda, we will be walking through, and I am super excited to walk you through how to maximize the value of sales intel. We also are going to talk about ensuring your team-wide adoption and also how to get the most out of your automations as well as data hygiene strategies. And then we will hopefully have some time towards the end for a short Q&A. And if any questions arise, feel free to put them in the chat. We will try to kind of get those answered towards the end of today's session. So starting off with maximizing the platform, let's go ahead and dig into the platform. Give me 1 second. There we go. So here we have the Sales Intel platform. So let's start by talking off how to fully leverage Sales Intel just beyond searching for contacts and building up your pipeline. With Sales Intel, you have a wealth of resources available. Starting with, as an admin, you do have access to our Admin Success Center. So most of the time it's overlooked. This probably came out 6 or 7 months ago, where we can now see at a macro level where you are fully leveraging Sales Intel, as well as where you can see some gaps within your current usage. So here at the Sales Intel top of the screen, we have our Sales Intel achievements. And here we have a little progress bar kind of indicating where you are at in regards to leveraging all of the Sales Intel features. So this pretty much is a quick little go-to hub for your setup guide, seeing where you can leverage and where you have a few gaps. So if we go ahead and open it up, this Sales Success Center, we have the ability to see all of these different tasks, which allow you to see the tasks as well as the status for your current users for your team. So you can see how many users have been integrated with your CRM. Some of these tasks, they may not be applicable for your company, but they are a really great way just to kind of see a quick overview. You can see what team members have been integrated with your CRM. You can also see how many users have also installed our RevDriver Chrome extension, which can be super beneficial, especially if you have a sales team. You can see if all of your platform licenses have been distributed. This is super helpful in case anyone leaves, if you may not be aware, if someone recently is not using Access, you have the ability to see the status here, as well as seeing if you currently have enrichment enabled, as well as foreign intel enabled. And then finally, something that we'll touch on towards the end is going to be our automations. You can see if you have any visitor intel, intent, or news automations. So this is very helpful just to see a big macro view, as well as you'll be able to see where you are in regards to the status bar. Hopefully, eventually, we want everyone to be either at the advanced or expert level, just depending on what features your company currently uses in regards to Sales Intel. I do also want to point out some additional resources that could be overlooked as well. You do have our support center here in the upper right corner. This can be super helpful for any resource guides as well as how-to guides, as well as frequently asked questions. If you go ahead and open it up, you have a little search bar here, but here is where you can see all of our frequently asked questions and product guides to our most used features. And this is super helpful if you just start typing in something in regards to enrichment and you go ahead and press search. Our Sales Intel support will automatically bring up all of those resource articles connected to the specific topic that you have entered in. So this is really great whether you are looking this up for yourself or if you want to send any of these links to any of your team members. If your team members are getting questions, this is super helpful as well. We also have the ability to leverage our Sales Intel Academy. This is very helpful. As admins, you guys can go ahead and sign up for our admin certification, whereas other users on your team can also sign up for the user certification. What these courses will do, they will give you short little video tutorials on Sales Intel's most used features, as well as little quick quizzes to kind of keep you engaged. But this can also help you get familiar with the Sales Intel platform as well as be an additional resource for you. And then at the end, you can get a quick little Sales Intel certification as well that you can share with your team. So these are some really great resources that are readily available to you right as soon as you log into Sales Intel. You don't need any access or anything like that. Just log in and you have these resources available to you. Beyond that, we also have another way to kind of encourage maximizing the platform. If you're unfamiliar with our Sales Intel resource library, this is another great way to get familiar with how other companies are using Sales Intel, and you have the ability to explore case studies as well as testimonials within our resource library. And we also offer things like past webinars, as well as podcasts and blogs and ebooks that are all related to helping build your pipeline and making the most out of sales intel. These stories can really help you highlight how teams across different industries have used sales intel to help drive growth within their own company, help build their own pipeline, and then this can also help you spark ideas for how your team might be able to expand usage as well. And then finally, coming back to another resource to help you maximize the platform, you do have the ability to leverage your customer success manager as well as your account manager. So, depending on how often you meet with your team, your account manager, hopefully, you're meeting with them either on a monthly or quarterly basis. And then your customer success manager is always there to help schedule time for one off meetings, to do trainings, to help with adoption, all of that good stuff. But you don't have to navigate sales until alone. We definitely want to make sure that you're leveraging us on our side as well. And then depending on what your meetings kind of look like, we do offer the ability to talk about new features that are going on with Sales Intel, as well as talk to things that are on our product roadmap. And we also would love to hear some feedback from you if you're coming into any roadblocks or hiccups when you're with your Sales Intel usage. We want to make sure that we hear that as well. And then finally, depending on your case uses with Sales Intel, we can also offer some exclusive invites to some early access to some features if it could be applicable. So there are a ton of different ways to maximize the platform, and just kind of getting started with these resources are a super great way to start. So kind of moving right along, we do offer the ability to actually talk about attribution and reporting as well. That's another great way to talk about maximizing sales intel. So for example, if you're using things like a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, we also highly recommend attributing your contacts or companies to Salesforce as the source. This can also help you measure like ROI and tie closed won opportunities back to your prospecting efforts. So, accurate attribution with sales intel into your CRM, this can align with better budgeting as well as growth planning. So, just wanted to touch on that as well. Kind of circling to driving team adoption. Sales Intel is a super helpful tool, tons of different capabilities, but even the best tools only work if your team is actually using them. So in the upper right corner, just want to show you some super useful things as an admin. In the upper right corner under account settings, you have the ability to easily access all of your users very easily, whether you want to invite new users or you want to remove users as well. If someone is recently moving positions or leaving the company, you can easily delete them and make room for another member of your go-to-market team. One thing that I will touch on that sometimes gets overlooked is our export feature here. If you go ahead and click export, you do have the ability to see a specific date range for user info and credit usage. This can really help you monitor what users are actively logging in and how many exports they're running at a specific time. And with this, you can easily monitor your settings, making sure you're getting the most out of sales intel as well as your team is driving adoption. Along with this little export feature, admins, you should also be receiving usage reports from our platform that we use for reporting, which is called Churn Zero. Those reports should show login frequency, search activity, as well as adoption trends. These reports are super helpful and critical for visibility, as well as helping identify power users that may need that extra support, or if they're not using it, it could go to another member of your go-to-market team. Another really great way to drive adoption as well is I would highly recommend leveraging your CS team and setting up monthly or quarterly office hours. So if you haven't done so already, quarterly or monthly office hours are just time on the calendar where you can go ahead and have a specific time to meet up with your customer success manager, where the meeting is informal, it's optional for your team depending on their needs, but it gives you a designated time to focus on check-ins related to either answering questions, sharing new features, as well as spotlighting success stories for your team. So I highly recommend setting up monthly or quarterly office hours if not already. If you don't want a specific cadence, you can always reach out to your customer success team as well to at least get a meeting on the books. Another recommendation that we also offer in regards to driving team adoption is possibly having something like a competition or a sales intel champion program that could be helpful for your team. Depending on how many team members and what your expected usage should look like, you can get creative with competitions. Everyone loves a friendly competition. Some things or some ideas for this competition could be like who's running the most research on demand requests, or who's running the most exports, who has closed the most leads coming from Sales Intel. All of these little champion programs can help with user adoption and making it fun for your team as well. That also brings us to a key question in regards to a lot of Sales Intel admins that they ask, how do you ensure that the users follow the guidelines and best practices for Sales Intel? As an admin, I highly recommend just meeting with your team and reinforcing the why behind Sales Intel, just letting them know why you chose Sales Intel as the platform, and then also documenting and sharing a usage playbook could be helpful as well. And then also, you would want to build accountability through things like reporting, peer recognition, and then pipeline reviews a lot from the Sales Intel platform. So I know we covered quite a bit so far really quickly, but I think between all of the resources that Sales Intel offers and the quick little, competitions and recommendations for team adoption, I think you can really get the most out of Sales Intel. Moving right along, to automations, I really want to highlight our agentic AI automations that have been in the works for quite some time now. So if you're not familiar, Sales Intel offers three different types of automations. We have our intent automations, visitor intel automations, as well as news alerts. All of these can be found in the upper right corner here under automations. You can easily access all of those automations and set up automations for your team. Starting with intent automations, if we go ahead and open it up, we can go ahead and set up a new automation here. Basic automation just indicates that you will be notified when a company searching on any of your intent topics are populated, but I would highly recommend advanced just because you'll be able to see the corresponding score and topic as well. If you go ahead and press create, we can go ahead and name that automation. I'll just name this one webinar. And then you can go ahead and choose whether you want predictive intent to be showing for your automation or Bombora intent. So I will go ahead and select a handful of Bombora topics for today's example. Here, the next thing that you would want to do is overlay it with the saved search. I will go ahead and overlay it with this saved search that I have here. I highly recommend overlaying it with a saved search just to ensure that the companies that you're getting alerted to do fall within your ideal customer profile. You also have the ability to set your specific score threshold depending on what you are looking for. And then you can either export them to your CRM. I highly recommend you would just want to make sure that all of the correct fields are mapped in order for that to go successfully. Or you can also have these assigned via weekly email report as well. So depending on your team, you can go ahead and send it to multiple team members or just yourself, and then you can press save and close, and you're automatically set. So if you're not familiar with our intent automations, our intent information updates on a weekly basis every Sunday. So by Monday morning, depending on the search results, you will have a new set of companies to help you prioritize with those intent automations on a weekly basis. The next automation that we can go through is going to be news automations. So news automations can be super helpful if you go ahead and want to keep a alert on specific companies that you're looking at. These can help you and they can show you which companies are they can show you which companies have any news alerts connected to either things like funding, leadership changes, or expansions, anything like that that can also help you within the buying cycle. So news alerts can either be set on a daily, weekly, or monthly cadence, just depending on your preference. And then all of these can be specific to you. So depending on what your list or your save search is, as well as whatever cadence you have, you can set news alerts as well. And then finally, we do offer visitor intel automations as well. Visitor intel automations will show you what companies are visiting your website. Um, Visitor intel automations can be set either on a daily or a daily or hourly basis, so you always get notified once any new companies are visiting your website. So between all of these agentic AI automations, they can really help you with your workflow and just making sure that you're getting the most out of the Sales Intel platform. Once you set up these automations, just because they're into your CRM or once they're into your email, the information just doesn't stop there. You would want to make sure that you're taking actionable steps from that company or company or contact information, whether you want to map these automations to workflows, or you can also assign these leads to campaigns or routes based on the roles that you have set up. And then you can always once you set these up, they're always available to change. Once you set these up, you always have the ability to evaluate the performance to see if you either need to improve in your cadence or improve in the topics that you have selected. So there's always a really great way to increase your performance in regards to these workflows. And then finally, I just kind of want to talk about in regards to automations. Um, AI is a very common thing that's going on right now. A lot of people can tell when you have an email that's all AI versus when it's customized. So the best thing with intent strategies would be to strike a balance between AI automations as well as personalization. So with this, I highly recommend using tools like dynamic fields that can help with your outreach for relevant contact. I also highly recommend adding, behavior triggers to help time outreach, as well as using these automations to help set up segmentation to help tailor your message to specific personas. One thing to watch with automations as well is you do want to make sure that all your field mapping is correct. Automations do fall flat if you can't match it to your CRM or it gets sent over to your CRM and then it's not really used over there. And then you would also just want to double check that when you are running any automations, that your persona and buying center roles are set at the automation level as well, and not just your safe searches. So we have a quick automation poll that just popped up if you want to go ahead and answer that. Where do you hit the biggest snag after switching an automation live? So I see quite a bit of people not turning on their automations. Um, looks like 60%, 50%. 60% or so. So hopefully this kind of starts getting some ideas started about how you can start using automations in your workflow. Okay, I'll give it another 10 seconds or so. But if you haven't set up intent automations yet, I highly recommend. This can really help you and your team save time, as well as time not only looking and running searches, but prospecting, as well as making sure that the right companies that are entering your total addressable market or your ICP are being actioned. So I will go ahead and end that poll. Moving right along to data hygiene, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to our slideshow here. So data hygiene, quick little overview on data hygiene. Don't want to scare ya, but 90% of CRM data is incomplete, stale, duplicated, or incorrect. 30% of B2B data actually decays every year. Duplicate records can make up 10 to 30% of the CRM, and then 40% of leads contain invalid or missing data. So no amount of automation or outreach matters if your data is inaccurate. So how do we go ahead and solve these problems? And how can we prevent data decay? This is where enrichment comes in. So Sales Intel offers multiple different types of enrichment. We can enrich things like contact information, firmographic, technographic, and all of these can be human or email verified. And then you have the ability to enrich through a couple different ways. We do offer our Salesforce managed package as well as HubSpot enrichment. So a little cool thing here is that we actually recently enabled native HubSpot enrichment to be directly through your Salesforce platform, or excuse me, through your Sales Intel platform. So if you have not done so already, or you are currently using HubSpot and you have either you're using enrichment on the previous way through webhooks, or if you are currently using HubSpot and you didn't have access before, please reach out to your customer success manager to enable that for you, and you can start doing enrichment through HubSpot straight through the Sales Intel platform. But we offer a few different types of enrichment. We offer triggered enrichment, scheduled, as well as manual enrichment jobs. And these are all going to be depending on your structure. So all of this just depends on how often you want to get your company and contact information updated. The cadence of enrichment should match either your sales cycle or your marketing cycle, as well as your team structure. For example, fast moving BDR teams may benefit from a weekly enrichment, whereas more strategic enterprise teams might only need monthly or quarterly updates. So this is all just depending on your needs. And then another way that Sales Intel also offers enrichment is we do offer Forms Intel, where you have the ability to automatically enrich a form that's being completed on your website. And this can be done through our HubSpot or Marketo. So just wanting to kind of talk about some pitfalls regards to common data use pitfalls. Some things that we've seen is exporting data without ownership. Once it's in your CRM, who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to start taking those action items to making sure that that contact or company leads to a closed deal? We also see a pitfall in regards to inconsistent tagging or field naming. This can cause broken filters as well as reports that may not be as useful. So that is another pitfall there. We also see a pitfall in regards to custom fields that are not standardized. Leads that can lead to bad segmentation. So whatever fields that you want to enter in, you just want to make sure that everything's standardized to the best of your ability. And then finally, we have no usage guidelines. Users can either misuse or ignore valuable data that's coming into your CRM. And then putting your data to work. Once it's in your CRM, there are a few different things that you can do. You can start with either creating automated workflows. This can help you route and activate those enriched records or those contacts that are coming over from Sales Intel. The next thing you would want to do is also align your go-to-market strategy. Depending on if that contact that just entered your CRM, if they are, surging on intent, you would want to send those over to your BDR team for outreach. Or let's say you have a company or contact that visited your website, they're now in your CRM, but they're not really part of your ideal customer profile. What would you do with that contact? You would want to either add them to nurture streams or something like that, just to kind of maintain a good relationship there. So with enriched data, you don't want it just to sit idle in your CRM. People are always paying either storage fees for contacts and company information, or you're just going to start cluttering your CRM. Data in can only be helpful, or data in doesn't always mean value out. All of the information that's coming into your CRM, it's not useful unless it's activated. So we have another poll here. How often does your team run an enrichment sweep to curb data decay? Only when something breaks. So these are some interesting results so far. I know we're only 30 seconds in, but like I mentioned before, when it comes to how often you want to do enrichment or with your cadences, that's all dependent on your company. So some teams could be super helpful to be weekly. Some days it's super helpful. Sometimes it can be super helpful to be quarterly. It all just depends on your company and your kind of workflow. But I highly recommend, just depending if you're not updating it until something breaks, I don't know if that's the best route, but um, cool results there. So I will go ahead and end that poll. So I do want to just kind of show you real quickly, if you have not done so already, this is something that's actually coming soon to Sales Intel. Some of our users, is there a question? Some of our users, looks like there's a couple hands up. I'm going to leave questions just for a little bit. Just want to touch on this real quickly before we go into the question segment. But coming soon, if you have not done so already, we've actually started just implementing this with a handful of our users in the first wave. But we are actually, Sales Intel will start having a new interface. So this is going to be coming in the next few months or so, where you'll be able to actually see a complete breakdown of a lot of the attribution, for example, the exports, the visitor intel, for easier access. And then we'll also be getting some new searching features as well. So you can see here what was originally that regular Sales Intel homepage is now called Prospect Intel, and that would be like your regular search. So finally here, just want to show a quick overview of your customer success team. Um, these you may currently be in contact with any of my team members here, but uh, if you do have any questions, we do have a Q&A right now. But if you do not get your questions answered, or you want to go in a little bit more in depth into anything that we talked about, I highly recommend reaching out to your customer success manager. Their emails are on here, and if you don't know who your customer success manager is, feel free to reach out to me and I can always get you connected as well. So we have the last poll up here looking for support or help. Which sales intel resource do you lean on first when you're stuck? So I am glad to see that the lead right now is CSM and account manager. That's good for me. So I will go ahead and leave that up. And then if you do have any questions, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or go ahead and ask them. Um, I will give the poll another few seconds or so. Awesome. So it looks like a good majority of the attendees are currently reaching out to your CSM or account manager, which is really great to hear. I'm really glad that you're leveraging us as a resource. Sometimes it's a lot easier just to kind of hop on a quick call, review things over a 10-minute Zoom sesh rather than going through a support article, but you have tons of different resources to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and then start looking at the Q&As. So someone commented about the polls. Hopefully you were able to see that last one. So someone asked when the new interface is expected. So the new interface will be rolling out in batches these next couple of months, and I believe it depends on when your next renewal is. So if you have any questions about the new interface, I would highly recommend reaching out to your customer success manager just so that they can narrow in on a specific time frame, just because it's coming out in batches. Um, And then we have another question for teams running on either the Salesforce managed package or HubSpot native enrichment. How do you prevent field conflicts or overwrite issues? So all of the field mapping and conflicts or overwrite issues are going to be to your discretion. You do have the ability to skip specific fields if you do not want them overwritten, and you do have the ability to kind of go back in time if something were to get overwritten. We do have the ability to kind of go back. But I highly recommend just making sure your fields or your your fields and your overwrite issues are selected whenever you're mapping your fields. And if you ever want to get more specific, like I mentioned, reaching out to your CSM and reviewing all of those fields would be helpful. Any other questions? So the question was, hello, does the new interface allow already revealed exported contacts to be easily excluded from a new export? So our system actually does have that currently. That is if you have Salesforce or HubSpot at the moment. If we go ahead and open up Sales Intel, give it 1 second. There we go. Sales Intel. If you go ahead and look, if you have Salesforce or HubSpot, you have the ability to search by CRM filters. That is something that your CRM admin would have to set up and allow. It would take about 24 to 48 hours for that to be able to be synced, just so that Sales Intel can kind of sync with Salesforce or HubSpot. But you do have the ability to see that, and you can actually filter by CRM filters. If you do not have either of those, if we go ahead and run a search, uh, you do have the ability to see a little, let's see if they're populating here. I don't see them on any of these search results. But if you are in a search, you have the ability to see a little eye kind of symbol, and that just indicates that someone from your team has reviewed or looked at the contact, not necessarily exported it. But if you have Salesforce or HubSpot, you do have the ability to filter by CRM filters. If you don't, I would have to double check and follow up with you there. Any other questions I can help with today? Yes. So, something that also mentioned with that previous question in regards to allowing already revealed or exported contacts, another way to go about that also would be to, once you go ahead and export those contacts or companies into your CRM, you do have the ability to add them to a suppression list. So once you go ahead and add them to a suppression list, I'll just name this one webinar. Once you export them, you would go ahead and add them to a suppression list. And then when the next time you're running that save search, under your filters and under suppression list, you can go ahead and overlay that search that you're looking at with that suppression list of the companies that you just exported. And then you can go ahead and press update, and that will remove those companies that you just exported. So that is a good workaround. Thank you so much for suggesting that. Uh, Any other questions I can help with? So another question that was here is, how do you structure your CRM so sales intel is captured as a discrete source without double counting other campaign touches? I would just need some additional information. I would highly recommend reaching out to your CSM just for this specific question. I would want to get some additional information on double counting your other campaigns and how your other campaigns are set up. So I think that could be a good question for your CRM, or excuse me, your CSM. Awesome. Yes. So another question that we have is, when doing a search, is there a way to search specific countries, or excuse me, counties instead of zip codes? So you do have the ability to search by counties under company location and zip metro. Rather than doing that zip code, we do offer some metro areas, and you do have the ability to select up to 5 metro areas in one search. So rather than zip codes, this could be another great way. For example, if you're searching the Bay Area, you can do San Francisco, and this can help you with the counties instead, or as close to the counties as possible. The next question is, how do you enforce admin guidelines while still letting power users experiment and feed new best practices back to them? That is a really good question. I would have to see exactly what your power users are experimenting with. For example, if they're pulling contacts that don't really fall within their ICP or something like that. Um, I would just kind of go back into the value of why sales intel. You always want your powers users to experiment and get the most out of the platform. But if that is affecting other sectors of your CRM, whether it be including contacts that don't fall within your ICP, you would just want to make that noted. They do have the ability to search in sales intel, but they don't always necessarily have the ability, or they don't also necessarily need to be exporting to the CRM. So a possible way to kind of let your team experiment would possibly be, rather than exporting into the CRM, exporting as a CSV and just making sure that you're implementing and letting them know about your best practices for your team. Any other questions? I hope that answered that one for you. Anyone else? And like I mentioned before, this webinar is just the starting point. If you ever want to get more familiar with anything that we talked about, I highly recommend reaching out to your customer success team for those more specific questions or more customized answers there.